Good evening, everybody. Hopefully that's working. Um, and thank you for coming to this, the I think 14th now, Mary, is it? Talk in the Historic Ridgeway project series, sponsored by the North Wessex Downs. This evening, you have the misfortune of having me talking to you about tracing the Ridgeway, people and places, and how we use documents and maps to try and understand people's lives and where they lived and how they lived. Um, so uh, I shall begin if that's okay. The image on the front comes from a book called Travels Round Our Village, a book about the village of West Hendred, and the illustrations are from that book, and they're by Leslie Brooke. Um, sorry. Um, as the subject of the talk is about the people of the Ridgeway, I'd like to dedicate this talk to the memory of my friend Richard Tingley, in the sitting on a bench outside our house with his beloved dog Scamp and a nice glass of cider. Richard was a man who lived his life on and around the Ridgeway, and formed and led the scout group named after Cuckomsey Hill for many years. Richard was a very kind man, and he was a countryman. Not only did he teach me how to pluck, skin, joint almost anything that ran or flew over the downs over the years, he also taught me and so many others when you can take from nature when you need to leave it alone. So thank you very much, Richard. Much missed. Um, the Historic Ridgeway project is a 4-year project. It's majority funded by Historic England, with the specific aims that you can see bullet pointed there. We've been progressing with all of these areas nicely, but what is lacking, we think, is engaging people with the social history of the trail and the surrounding landscape, and for people to be able to discover the history for themselves and to add to everyone's understanding of the landscape. Um, so, uh, so yeah, essentially we need to understand where stuff is and what it is. Um, and it's often overlooked in places like the Ridgeway landscape because it's not under direct threat. So people don't really go through in any great detail the surviving evidence of people's houses and homes. Um, and the reason we do it is to say for the second bulleted point, for example, to prevent accidental damage to archaeological sites. I mean, it's often with the best of intentions. People will try and dig a pond for biodiversity reasons up on the ridge, or plant trees. And if they're oversensitive archaeology or the floor surfaces of post-medieval buildings, it can cause damage. And these are the sources of information that we tend to look at when we're doing these desk-based studies of this type. And the National Library of Scotland, bless them, have digitised all their Ordnance Survey maps from the first edition to about 1940, I believe, and for both 6-inch maps and the 25-inch maps. So they're readily available as the chief source of looking at this kind of thing. Berkshire Enclosures is a website where all the enclosure maps from about 1801 are stored digitally. The websites such as the Genealogist have the tithe maps all digitised, along with the census returns for each parish. Heritage Gateway is a tremendously useful tool for understanding what's already been discovered and giving context to the things that we find as well. The Historic England Red Box Archive is an archive of specialist photographs and historic photographs that are kept by Historic England, but they're now available online. They've all been digitised. The British Newspaper Archives can really put flesh on the bones of some sites and occasions and how people enjoyed themselves. The archaeological journals, like the Newbury District Field Club, but journals are mostly online now. And British History Online will give access to things like the Victoria County history of Oxfordshire and Berkshire, for this area, it's Berkshire Volume 4. And there's Apex, which is Historic England's excellent online aerial photograph archive, which we'll see a few shots from over the course of this talk, and Google Earth as well, where they have the series of dated aerial photographs from the run from the 1940s onwards. And right on to trying to find those lost farms. And this is another image from Travels Around Our Village, the lone house on the downs. I've often thought it must be an absolutely idyllic way to have lived. Slightly ruined for me by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle when he writes in Sherlock Holmes, The Adventure of the Copper Beeches, as Watson's expounding the joys of living such an idyllic lifestyle. He says, "The pressure of public opinion can do in the town what the law cannot accomplish. There is no lane so vile that the scream of a tortured child or the thud of a drunkard's blow does not beget sympathy and indignation amongst the neighbours, and then the whole machinery of justice is ever so close that a word of complaint can set it going, and there is but a step between the crime and the dock. But look at these lonely houses, each in its own fields, filled for the most part with poor ignorant folk who know little of the law. Think of the deeds of hellish cruelty, the hidden wickedness which may go on year in, year out in such places, and none the wiser." So it ruins it for me a little bit, but I still think it would have been lovely. So starting with a case study. This is Windmill Farm in Compton. As you can see from the aerial photograph on the right, it's no longer there. It's the buildings are gone and it's under trees. But the first edition map on the left-hand side from around 1877 shows it all quite clearly. I always like to start with the first edition maps. Because they generally have one foot in the past as well as one foot in a rapidly changing world. So they're a great anchor point for trying to find your way and your place in earlier maps. Sorry. You can see the map on the right is the tide map of around 1840. The Compton Windmill is marked, the circular base here you can see, and there's probably the miller's house immediately adjacent. And we know from the schedule that accompanies the tide map that Elizabeth Beasley was occupying the site, the mill, and the accompanying pieces of ground that were arable. Excuse me. The census return for Windmill Farm for 1851 shows the Beasleys are still in possession 10 years after the tithe. Excuse me, it may be that Charles Beasley is Elizabeth's son. But this is the last real mention we have of milling on this site. And as the first edition map, shows us, the original house for the miller has gone by 1877, and it's probably between 1851 and 1861 that the new houses are built, and that original house goes. One of the cottages in 1861 is occupied by the Hazel family in both 1861 and 1871. They're blacksmiths, but it's perhaps not surprising, as there's a foundry in Compton at this time, and there's an awful lot of blacksmiths and moulders and founders in the parish. It's interesting to note, though, that the 61-year-old wife of the head of the household, David Hazel, Elizabeth, is a blacksmith journeyman, and I've not seen that before. I think that's quite interesting. By 1910, the windmill has been taken down. You can see it's not on the Ordnance Survey edition of 1910. And the farm is currently occupied by a family who are working in agriculture. This is an aerial photograph from the Apex website, the Historic England Archive, of the houses in 1946, clearly still standing and in pretty good state of repair by the looks of things. um, and you can see from the image on the left that the houses have gone by 1960, just leaving the well and the reservoir pond where the houses used to be. And in the photograph on the right-hand side, the aerial photograph from Google Earth, you can see that in around 2003, the whole site was planted for new woodland. And the sharp-sighted of you will see a ring ditch in here, possibly the remains of a prehistoric barrow, by the way. This is Latten Down Farm on the downs above Wantage, very close to the Ridgeway. The first edition map shows us that it's quite a grand affair with houses on two sides of a walled garden. So that's the main house there, and there's some houses here, and the walled garden enclosed in here. And then there's a yard on the other side of the track to the north. And you can see on the first edition ordnance survey, there's a brickworks to the northeast. That's probably the source of the wealth that supports this farm. There's a clay cap on the top of the chalk here on this part of the Ridgeway and in the landscape, which proved particularly good for producing good bricks. There seems to be quite a long history of brick production on Latten Down, as illustrated in the 1806 enclosure map. You can see the brick kiln here, and it's still there on the tide map of 1840. Sorry. There were two brickyards here. The first attached to the farm on Latten Down, the other South Ridgeway Farm, which became Lockinge Kiln. Both were probably well sustained by the remodelling of Lockinge and Ardington by Lord Wantage from the mid to the end of the 19th century, excuse me, and by the growth of Wantage itself. The LiDAR image in the bottom left corner shows the size of and extent of the clay pits and how much must have been extracted in the 19th century. So the census return of 1901 shows that there were 23 people living and working on Latten Down. The farm said his wife having the main house alone. But it's about this time that the brick production appears to stop and the writing appears to be on the wall of the farm. It ruled 4 times in the first 30 years of the 20th century, here in 1900, again 1907, 1916, and in 1925. The latter is probably best described in the central image here. It's the 1925 sale. It goes into a bit of detail about what there is here. There's the small farmhouse, the homestead, and the double cottage, and water provided by a wind pump. The final image on the right shows the successful grant application for the repair of the 2 workers' cottages at Latten Down in 1928, at a cost of £100 for each house. That's about £6,000 in modern money. These images, all these articles have come from the British Newspaper Archive, which it's a really useful tool, and it's quite simple to search. And this is the farm in 1953. It looks relatively recently abandoned, but with a sound roof and windows on the cottages, and sound roofs on the clearly unused barns. It's a lovely thing, and a lovely aerial photograph. This is just a little bit more detailed to try and understand what's still remaining in 1953. The walled garden here, the massively overgrown walled garden, is here, and that's this wall here. The two standing cottages are here, but the main house has gone. That would have stood here. And most of the court, the yard and the buildings are still extant at the time, though. But it is all becoming very overgrown. So the Ordnance Survey maps show us that in 1960, pretty much most of what is standing in 1953 is still standing in 1960. But by 1973, there's just the main big barn in the yard that's got a purpose, so it's still being used. But everything seems to have gone by 1980. This one is Northfield Farm. Which lies just off the Ridgeway. It's a little further over. It's in Hertfordshire. This one. And in 1841, the farm was tenanted by a John Collier. And in 1851, there were two families of that name living there, as you can see from the census returns. The top is the schedule from the tide map. The next is the 1851 census. No, 1841 census, and the bottom, the 1851. James and William, the heads of the households, were agricultural labourers, meaning that they were paid workers on someone else's land. Their wives and daughters, Abigail, Martha, and Fanny, were straw platters. Straw platting was a cottage industry mainly undertaking in Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire, and was a highly skilled and involved splitting and plaiting straw for the construction of hats and bonnets. It was usually undertaken by the women and girls and boys under the age of 8, who after that age were expected to work in the fields. Excuse me. Although highly skilled, it was also pretty unpleasant work, and most of the workers lost their teeth at an early age, and the straw dust was very bad for the lungs. The straw platters of Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, Essex and Suffolk, of whom there are around 50,000, produced around 200 million metres of plaited straw a year that was then shipped to Canada, Australia, the West Indies, India, Brazil and Europe. By the early 1890s, straw plaiting that had supplemented agricultural wages to maintain a just about living wage was supplanted by mechanisation, and many straw platters and their agricultural families were, according to the papers at the time, living on starvation wages. The Colliers seem to have done all right. Seem to have survived. They're not living in Northfield Farm after about 1860, but there's a knot of Colliers living in 3 houses opposite the Valiant Trooper, the pub in Albury, just down the road. So there's a really annoying fly that just keeps buzzing me, literally. This is a Grounds Farm, West Hendred, and I'm always intrigued by a footpath that seems to go nowhere or have no real purpose. But if we switch on the first edition map, we can see there were 2 farms here, Lower Farm and Grounds Farm, just off West Hendred Cow Common. The estate map of 1606 shows the area very much as it was in 1840, but the buildings were further south, and we know from documents in the Record Office that the buildings here, the sheep house, were of medieval origin. But by 1840, the 2 new farms had been constructed here. This is another engraving from Travels Around Our Village. It's labelled as an outlying farm, but from its location and with the Ridgeway on the downs at the back there, I'm pretty sure this is what Grounds Farm would have looked like. I know that these were pulled down in the 1960s, as the son of the farmer at the time remembers it clearly. He also said it had the deepest well in the whole of Old Berkshire, which I presume is still there and hopefully covered. But at the time that Travels Around Our Village was written in 1901, the census shows there was John Statton and his wife living at the farm. He was the cattleman for the farms, and they had a servant. Uh, Along with lost farms, there's all sorts of interesting things that we can find in the maps. Um, oh, I'll go the right way. There we go. Here, up by Ashdown House, the National Trust estate. If we look at the first edition map, we can see a race course running over Odstone Down from Tower Hill to Weathercock Hill. It's quite unusual in that it doesn't go around in a circle or an oval. It's just one straight course, and it looks very much to me like it's a survival of a medieval deer course. The deer courses were ways of testing the speed of your dogs by having them race against each other to try and pull down a stag. From the articles in the British newspaper archive, it seems that although the course has now been given over largely to horse racing, it was still used for hare coursing, a similarly unpleasant exercise. But it's the great and the good attended, and it was yes, very very well watched locally. And it's probably why further over, just on the next down over, there's a hare warren that we can see on the first edition map. I've not seen one of these before, but it's presumably there to supply a ready stock of hares for the dogs to run. Other things we see on the maps. This is the tithe map of Compton Beecham. You can see a square enclosure here, surrounded by trees. This is probably a penfold. These were enclosures on drove roads, so the Ridgeway is just a little further over, where for a small consideration, a small coin, the drover could leave his stock in a paddock, well sheltered paddock, for the night and go off to the pub down in the village. There are only a few of these left in the landscape now. Many of them were ripped out when the downs started to be ploughed after the war. But it's really interesting to know where they were, so that we can understand that pattern of droving better, and preserve those final examples where we find them. Also on this map, we can see this strange enclosure here that's got mere or boundary stones marked all the way around it. Again, it's quite unusual. It's always nice to try and go and have a look and see if you can find these mere stones. Some of these enclosures go quite a long way back in history. This is the cricket pitch and pavilion just off the Ridgeway, which runs down over here. It's in a wild and blustery place, fairly far out from East Ilsley and from Compton. It sits on the Compton Downs, and I wonder if it's the cricket pitch for the troops of the Berkshire Yeomanry who had their summer camps on the Churn Plain just down here. Excuse me. While looking this up on the British newspaper archive, I was looking to try and find out what team played there and if they were any good, frankly. But it looks like it was often used as a location point in mock battles that they had at Churn. For example, this one in 1894, you can see in the newspaper article that specifically talks about that cricket pavilion. Another article refers to it as the Tin Hut, so I don't think it was that substantial. The manoeuvres were watched by the commander-in-chief, the Duke of Cambridge, and there was a whole division of troops divided into 3 brigades. The first brigade was the Greys and the 4th Hussars, the second the Life Guards and the 9th Lancers, and the third the Inniskillings and the 8th Hussars. It talks in intricate detail about how the troops moved around the landscape and used the landscape, the folds and the coombes to disguise their movements. And there was a battery of guns near the cricket pavilion, just on the north side of the Ridgeway. All unintendedly interesting things to find out. Sorry. This is a Nuffield Common. It's a strange little settlement group of houses in these strangely sinuous allotment boundaries with a strangely sinuous enclosure boundary around it. And a brief look at the historic mapping shows that from at least 1840, an area of ground appears to have been carved out of Nuffield Common, with a small number of tenements, there in addition to the pub, letterbox, and smithy. In fact, the 25-inch first edition of 1876 show there were 2 smithies in this small area. And the census return of 1871 indicates that the pub was also a shop. The professions of those who lived here in the houses include gamekeeper, farmer, tinsman, a tinsmith, iron moulder, a grocer, etc. The boundaries are surprisingly sinuous, and that's also reflected in the line of the routeway now formalised as the Ridgeway, which runs just around the north side of the enclosure. This discrete collection of buildings seems quite unusual for this period and area. It appears more akin to a Cornish miners' settlement, and may relate to brick making. We know that Nettlebed was a centre of brick making, and this lies just a little way out. They are clearly the buildings are clearly located on the angle between the Henley Road, the road between Wallingford and Henley, and the well-used track that later on became the National Trail. But we don't know whether this is originally a squatters' settlement for people kicked off the land by enclosure, whether it's a deliberate settlement to make the best use of brick clay and to make bricks. And it's difficult to tell. It needs further investigation, really. But it could be the 2 smithies here. Maybe they're founded on the brick kilns. It's a really interesting group. And I'm afraid after half an hour, that's it from me. But if you think you'd like to do this kind of work and come and volunteer for us, please do join us. We'll provide the links to the maps and the other resources. We'll give you templates to how to record your findings that will be added onto our LiDAR database, so that all the information's in one place. And we'd be providing regular training and hopefully site training days as well, so you can go and have a look at the things people have discovered. Do feel free to ask questions in the chat. Sorry, I raced through that. I do apologise.
Thank you, Dan. There are 2 questions in the chat. One is from Charlotte, who's asking, where is Compton Windmill?
Just to the northeast of Compton. I'll find out. I'll bring the map up in a second. But it lies just outside the village on the high ground, as you might expect. It's not there anymore. Sorry, what was the other question?
Where would you recommend for sourcing aerial photography?
The Apex Historic England Archive site is fantastic. It's really, really good. They've got an awful lot of the collection digitised there. But if you really wanted to see everything, I think a visit to the archive itself for the specialist oblique photographs as well as the vertical ones. The farm in West End, Grounds Farm, to the north of the Hare, almost at the railway. Yeah, within stone's throw of the railway. But the footpaths are still there. And on the ground where Lower Farm was, you can still see a chalk and brick spread for where they were pulled down.
Oh, questions are coming in now. What is your favourite part of the Ridgeway?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
That's difficult.
Well, just off the Ridgeway is Laybury Hill, which is, excluding castles, my favourite site in the whole of southern England. As Mary and I were just talking before the talk began, is.
Well, it was my first visit there at the weekend. It's a beautiful place, evocative of all the days of yore, as we'd say. Yeah.
I did fall off the trig point last time I was there, but other than that,
Yeah.
it's really nice.
Well, I would just comment that the maps that you've shown us, Dan, are wonderful. You must have done a lot of research to have found all the different layers and according to the dates as you've moved through time.
Well, it's fascinating, and there's all sorts of rabbit holes to disappear down while you're doing it, and particularly with the people and the names and their occupations. It's fascinating.
Are the occupations particularly linked to spots in the landscape, would you say?
So there's in the isolated farmsteads, there's a lot of shepherds and agricultural labourers, as you might expect. But the places they're from are quite interesting as well. They can have been born in very far-flung places, depending if they're, I don't know, presumably if their families were posted abroad or.
Oh, another one. Can you remind us where to find the maps, please?
The Ordnance Survey maps, if you just Google National Library of Scotland Ordnance Survey, that should get you there. And what you want are the 6-inch maps and the 25-inch maps. But do email me. I can send you all the links should you wish me to. Oh, I have a wake from Compton when I was there around 2000. There was still a sheep dip. That's interesting. Thank you.
I'm just posting the link to the YouTube channel where we've uploaded all the previous Historic Ridgeway lectures, and you can look through all of them at your leisure. And tonight's one will be recorded and uploaded there as well.
Sorry, it's so short. I rather gabbled it, I'm afraid. Sorry, I see we've got a question from Janice. Have you ever come across evidence that the Ridgeway was a trading route? There's vast amounts of evidence that it was, certainly. Not least, it's the quickest and easiest way to get stock from the Western Shires up to Ilsley, which was the big market before stock went on to the vast and voracious market that was London. Excuse me, and things like the penfolds that we see in the landscape, make it pretty clear.
And there's a comment. Someone has a weight from Compton Windmill.
Yeah, no, I saw that. Yeah, it's fascinating, brilliant.
And some new ones. Would there have been more windmills on the Ridgeway?
There are a great number of windmills actually. If you look at the first edition map for West Ilsley, for example, in addition to its own brewery, it also has a windmill, 2 smithies, I think, and they were very self-sufficient communities. And because, particularly up on the higher chalk, there isn't sufficient water flow to grind the corn, you need a windmill.
Oh, there's quite a few. How did they get stock from East Ilsley to London?
Mostly walked it. Later on, they'd put it on the train maybe, but the cheapest and easiest constant. A market like London needs a constant supply, so it doesn't really matter how long it takes to get there, if you're constantly supplying it. So yeah, much of it was walked. And sorry, Mary.
No, you go ahead. They're your questions for you, not for me.
Are there many ponds that cattle or sheep would have used, and are they there now? There would have been a large number of dew ponds, so clay-lined, puddled ponds that would have retained water. There are still a large number of them now. Many of them have been ploughed low, but you can still make them out. So in that sense, they're there now, but they no longer hold water. And is there any evidence of pilgrim routes via or connected to the Ridgeway? I'm afraid I don't know. No, I'm afraid I don't know.
I can hazard a guess on that and say no, there aren't. You can use the Ridgeway to access some routes, but there's nothing directly linked to the Ridgeway. Not yet, anyway. That may change. Dan, we've got one here from James. He said, you mentioned volunteering. What sort of activities do volunteers do?
Hopefully, exactly this kind of thing we'd like people to do. To go maps, the supporting documents, things like census, and cross-reference everything, and really tease out the stories of where people lived and who they were and what they did. Because not only is it a fun thing to do, but it's really, really valuable to understand that, I think, and to understand the history of the evolution of the landscape.
Perhaps, Dan, you could share the how those who are interested in volunteering, do they contact yourself?
If you could, I'll put my email back up. Sorry. Would have been quicker just to say it, wouldn't it? Sorry, can you see that? Probably not. Sorry, while my technical ignorance has been doing this, have there been any more questions, Mary?
More questions, Dan? I think that's it. Oh.
Don't tell you anything about Hardwell Camp near Compton Beecham.
Oh,
yes, it looks like it's a two-phase Iron Age fort. The southernmost. It's quite an interesting one actually because it's comparatively low ground, but there's a steep valley on both sides. With the only level approach coming from the south. So it follows the topography really nicely, and there was an extension of it in the later Iron Age, heading northwards. But it's interesting that there's another hill fort so close to Uffington and Rams Hill. It's quite a conundrum why you'd have three hill forts so close.
Okay. Oh, got one more question being typed. What other evidence of the ridge being used for military activities?
A surprising amount, particularly in the 19th century. They used Cuckomsey Hill, Scutcham and Knob, as the focal point of mock battles. It's either where the commanders stand to direct the battles, or it's the hill they've got to try and take. There was an awful lot went on at Churn Camp, and there were other camps, I think, at Ginge, and no, I can't remember where the other one was. But because it's open downland, it's where they can get large bodies of troops to do decent sets of manoeuvres and things without blowing anybody up or riding over them. So yeah, there's quite a lot, particularly in the 19th century. Well, we know the Vikings used it in 1006, for example, when they burnt Wallingford, had a pop at Cholsey, and then camped at Scutcham and Knob, waiting for the Saxon army. So it's a good quick route to get across country, and it's dry.
We said the last question. I'm interested in finding the site of the Roman villa near Stocks Meadow in Compton. Have you seen any sign of it?
I'm afraid it's not one that I know. But if you go onto Heritage Gateway and type in Compton into the search engine, then, well, yes, then you should be able to find it.
Is there anything else?
Well, thank you, Jane. Thank you.
And then just a last comment from Lynette, who says, my book, The Story of Compton, might be useful.
It certainly would. Thank you. I shall look it up. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm so sorry that was so short. I hope I didn't go too quickly that nobody could understand what I was talking about. Thank you.
Great talk. Thank you, Dan.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming.